Hello there, I'm Boo, or Jamie, and I like drawing, maximizing my hours in all the Pokemon games to find shinies, and I like to complain about lore in World of Warcraft. Hello, and welcome back to a new episode on the channel. Now, today, after we've quested a little bit with the Kaluax last time, today I thought we're gonna jump into the dungeon fun. Because just like Outlands, of course, Wrath of the Lich King also has a bunch of dungeons, and we're gonna start with everyone's absolute favorite dungeon in Wrath of the Lich King, the Oculus. Thank you for Random Dungeon Invite to also make this super epic and dramatic. I'm gonna jump in there real quick because I still wanna get my levels done. And after that, we're gonna jump into the Oculus. Gundrak. Once again. Honestly, are there like 2 dungeons in this rotation? Or what's up with that? Because I've been to the same dungeons over and over again. Alrighty, we're back and immediately I have to transmog my chest again. Because that won't do. And yeah, I've changed my appearance a little bit. Because I wanted to look a little bit more Wrath of the Lich King-y. Since this is a offset from the Warlock in Icecrown Citadel 10-man heroic. And I love this set on the Shadow Priest. It looks like it's done for the Shadow Priest and not for a Warlock. It also has a really cool head, this thing. But I love the beautiful face of my Elven lady too much to put it on. And now that I've checked if my recording is recording correctly, because ever since the last time my microphone acted up and a whole lot of 2 hours of recording was completely useless, we can finally jump into the Oculus. Now, this dungeon, if you are a connoisseur of the Wrath of the Lich King times, then you might remember this dungeon as the one that whenever it would show up as your random dungeon, you would immediately lose at least one person that would leave the dungeon, because this is a dungeon that is not even that bad. But the thing is, you have to use dragons. After the first boss, you get dragons to ferry around the instance, and you have to use these dragons to get from A to B, and most importantly, you have to use these dragons to fight the last boss. It got so bad that I think it was relatively close to the end of Wrath of the Lich King. Blizzard put in a satchel that you would get if you were a good boy or girl and actually finished the dungeon. Yep, that freaking bad. And I am the proud owner of both the Nexus dragons that drop from Malagos in the Eye dungeon that is also around the corner, simply because they added this satchel and because, you know, I'm a certified good boy, I got the mods from there. And now we're gonna talk to this cutie pie over here, choose a ring that we will sell, and now we're gonna choose one of these dragons to carry us around. Nowadays, it doesn't really freaking matter which one you choose. I remember back in the day, the knowers used the green dragon and the idiots always used the red dragon, and here I am being an idiot. And now we have to clear all these constructs on these different platforms, and as you can already see, you attract the attention of dragons flying around. Now the problem is that obviously if you're flying around, you have to take into consideration what's around you a lot more, and people tend to not really like that in World of Warcraft. Vashir was a good example of that, the questing zone that is completely underwater, of which we quested a few things with my hunter back in the day, because we wanted to get a few special pets. But overall, honestly, I've run this dungeon so many times on level and I never found anything wrong with it. Like, once you understand how to use these dragons, it's not that hard. But probably therein lies the problem. You have to read a little bit to understand what these dragons do, because all these dragons have different abilities and they profit off one another. So you also have to work together. Ew, in my MMORPG, no, of course not. And now we've already done half of the dungeon and are on the best way to get our best boy satchel. Now we have to hunt down this mage lord Urum, and he's gonna teleport all across these upper platforms before we can fight against him in the middle. And after he conjured elements and also some murlocs and ogres, now he's gonna summon a few beasts. And since this used to be a hunter-only channel, I can tell you, you can tame at least this mammoth. I don't know what happens to the wolf and to the wind snake. Maybe you can also tame them. I only came here to tame the mammoth, but maybe you can also tame the others. And now we can go to the middle and kill this dude. And maybe you can already see where they got a lot of inspiration for the Azure Archives, or whatever that dungeon is called again, with Sindragosa acting like she's a good girl. But yeah, this and the Nexus were obviously the blueprint for those dungeons. And I know you're getting tired of these opinions of mine by now, but I think that these are prettier. And now, because we want an achievement, I'm just gonna kill this boy like this, because like that we get all the achievements of not using a single dragon in the fight against the end boss. Usually you would have to do this in 3 days, obviously, because you would need to use a different drake every time. But since we're absolutely overpowered and this is very old content, we can just do it like that. And just like that, you have braved the horrible, horrible Oculus with me. This is what people left the dungeon group for left, right and center, which is kind of funny because, again, this dungeon really wasn't that bad. Now we're gonna go into a dungeon that everyone loved, however, the Nexus. And apart from the picture loading in already looking gorgeous, this is honestly one of the few places where I understand how you could like blue dragons. I'm usually not that big of a fan of them, but I mean, this place is just so freaking beautiful, and I don't even like blue that much, but here we are. And this is a really cool dungeon, and I hope that maybe one day they will turn this into an M+ dungeon. That would be so cool. Here in the middle we can already see the end boss of this raid, but we cannot attack her right now because there are these orbs and we need to activate them by killing the bosses connected to them. Now the thing is, if you've ever quested the zone around the Nexus, then you know that Keristraza is a friend of yours that you quest together with, and together with her you kill the consort of Malygos. And because this is old WoW questing, after you killed the consort of Malygos, he takes Keristraza instead with him, and well, hopefully just breaks her mind and doesn't do anything else with her. But back in the day, Blizzard really liked these quests that were, well, saying a lot without actually saying it. I like to imagine that she was just turned against Alexstrasza and that he did not in fact turn her into his next consort. But well, now we come to Grand Magus Telestra, which is the first boss in this raid, and she was actually a teacher of Kel'Thas Sunstrider, and I always really liked her model, and she was actually the inspiration for me creating my very first mage back in Wrath of the Lich King. Oh, and I just remembered that we're in here for reputation and not just for wow. How did I... No. Well, this is just Shadow Priest things. Putting your Shadow Crush absolutely where it won't hit the entire pack. And now we come into the part of the Nexus that absolutely blew my mind when I saw it for the first time. Mind you, when I saw this dungeon for the first time, I was 9 years old, alright? So, yeah. I think you can see how a 9-year-old's brain was absolutely, oh my god. I know I said I'm gonna do all the trash for reputation, but there is a lot of trash in here that doesn't really give reputation. Especially these guys, these rifts. Well, they're just rifts. They don't give you anything. They're just there creating chaos. But now we're gonna go into this rift, or at least very close to it, where it's very obvious that time and space is getting all left up. And here we have the next boss, and the next boss is Anomalous, and his name is everything that he is. He is a big old anomaly created by the chaotic systems that Malygos had set in motion to, you know, rid Azeroth of anything that he doesn't consider worthy of magic. And now something that people always tend to forget when you used to do these dungeons for questing purposes. You had to use that item right there on the Rift platform, and the times that people were like, oh no, damn, did you have to use it over there, and had to run back? Countless. Countless. And I think you can already see where the M+ potential of this dungeon is rooted in. I think this could be fun. This could be one of these dungeons that is horrible to do, especially with some certain affixes attached to them, but I would love to see this. Blizzard, I know you're not hearing me yet, but please, please turn the Nexus into an M+ dungeon. That would be so cool. I would love this. Especially because the potential of this dungeon to not be run in a certain direction, but actually, you know, get a little bit creative depending on which boss you want to kill first and all these things that M+ is very famous for, are endless. Because you can go to any boss first if you want to. All these pathways are connected in this dungeon. I'm so bad with names. Oh yeah, the Azure Vaults. Exactly. Alright, the Azure Vaults. I think you can see very well where they got their inspiration for that dungeon. And here we are. Now we have activated all these spheres and you can even see the names of the bosses on them. And once we have activated them, Heristraza is going to become active and then we can free her from her torment. And also I have one arcane splinter missing. Alright, I guess I haven't killed all the trees in the garden, so BRB. And now we're gonna hand in all of our quests with these sexy Kirin Torm War Mages. War Mage, by the way, being a title that I always hoped we would get one day as well. And now we are done with the Nexus dungeons, and since I'm gonna do a separate video for all the raids because I cannot possibly fit in all the dungeons and raids into one video, we're gonna zoom to our next destination. And now that we're flying over Moaki Harbor, I'm gonna quickly steal a few more pups for reputation. Don't mind me, just casually stealing babies. And over there we're already flying towards our destination. And after we started with a dungeon that was so hated by so many people, we're coming to another dungeon that I think most people really loved, and me included. This is Utgarde Keep and Pinnacle, two dungeons a little bit apart from each other in level requirements, because Utgarde Keep was the first dungeon that you would enter basically if you started Wrath in the Howling Fjord, while the Pinnacle was a dungeon reserved for later levels actually. And for me this was the very first dungeon that I ever did on Northrend, probably like many other people as well, and you probably know this loading in screen, because this, well, this is still a dungeon that is in the time walking rotation, and if you leveled a character before they did the time walking thing with Chromie, then you also saw this dungeon a lot of times, just like the Hellfire Peninsula dungeons in TBC. Obviously this is very nostalgic because it always takes me back to when I started this game, but I've always felt like this is such a cool representation of like the Vrkul as a race, being these big humans with this huge Nordic influence. And by the way, in case you've never bothered to do that because you were probably zooming through here with a tank, take a moment, stay in the Dragonflyer pens and look upwards, because yep, this is open. There is no roof over these pens and you can just see the sky from here, something that I always really liked. And this was the first of the Sand Lane that you saw in World of Warcraft. Now the Sand Lane were a special force of the Lich King. These were blood elves that were turned into some form of vampiric beings. And over the course of Wrath of the Lich King you would kill 3 of them in different questing zones or dungeons. They return in the Icecrown Citadel as a whole boss encounter, being raised back from the dead once more by Blood Queen Lanathal. And it has always confused me that when the Venthyr were introduced in the Shadowlands, they never made any attempts to tie them in with a Sand Lane, since both of them are vampiric beings. I also always found it weird that we never really got anything vampiric. I mean, in a way you can say that the Shadow Priest and especially the Blood Death Knight have a very close connection to being, well, almost vampires themselves. But wouldn't it have been nice to include like some sort of Sand Lane skin or backstory that you could also play, especially now that Dark Rangers are basically an option, although just for 2 of all the elf races, if you ignore Void Elves being a special race from the Blood Elves. But where is my Dark Ranger skin for a Nightborn, by the way? And don't you say now that doesn't make sense. Doesn't, but there's a bunch of cosmetics in World of Warcraft that don't make any bloody sense. So there's that. And I remember these guys having very funny voice lines in German, because because obviously when I started this game, you won't believe it, I played this game in German, and I actually played up until Mist of Pandaria in German. Especially with the TBC and Wrath names, I sometimes confuse them still with their German names because they're just so known to me. So forgive me if I slip up every now and then. And now we ascend to the last part of the dungeon, and here you can see we're out in the open again. We're actually on the terrace that looks over the Howling Fjord, and ain't that gorgeous? Wow. I always love it when dungeons do that. The Hellfire Citadel also does that, at least the first part, the ramparts, that you can also look out onto the Hellfire Peninsula, which is real cool in my opinion. And here we can even look into the bay a little bit. Obviously, this takes a few artistic freedoms just to make it a little bit easier on the engine back in the day, I guess. And now we're gonna kill Ingvar the Plunderer, who will be raised by a Valkyr in just a second to fight once more for the Lich King, but obviously also fail to our completely overpowered Holy Nova. Oh no, and I also killed him too fast. Yeah, this can happen if you're like me and you can't wait to kill the boss. If you kill him during his frightful roar in his second phase, then this is still closed, and this is really stupid because we could just jump down there and be at the entrance of the dungeon again. But we have to learn from our mistakes, so, well, see you in a bit. And here we have entered a dungeon that probably many of you know very well, because this is the dungeon where you can get the reins of the blue proto-drake from Skadi the Ruthless. Now this is a grind I also did for quite a long time, but thankfully I am done with that one. But then again, I've been playing this game for so long, I have pretty much all of the old stuff just because, well, you know, if you play a lot, then you also get a lot. That's kind of how these games go. But yeah, once again, we are outside basically. I mean, here we can look a little bit over the Howling Fjord as well, with a very simple skybox in the background that the long distance view definitely doesn't do any favors. And in here, our first glimpse at my baby boo, my precious, my beautiful, absolute gorgeous baby boy who never did anything wrong in his life, and I stand by that. This is sarcasm, by the way. Please don't tell me that Arthas did plenty wrong. I know that he did. That's why he's my favorite character. I like villains. And while he is transforming Slava into the first boss of this instance, we're gonna clean up some trash. And it's right about now that I realize if I keep narrating so much for every single instance, then I don't think we will finish all of them in one video. My lord, do I have a lot to tell, huh? And also something, when you do these old Wrath dungeons and you have skilled cooking, then you will get some recipes for tasty cupcakes or for last week's mammoth. And these are cute gimmicky recipes that you can cook, and when you eat the stuff that comes out of these recipes, you will get a nice 2-hour buff that will put your character into a mood that is fitting the dish that you prepared. And now we have entered the trophy hall, and here first we're gonna throw a shadow crash over at these boyos. Oh, and we missed one, of course. And now we're gonna start the summoning ritual for Gortok Palehoof and his friends. By the way, if you're farming the mount, you probably know this, but obviously this and the boss before you can just leave out, you can ignore them and just rush through to Skadi. But since we're here for the experience and also reputation, I will kill them, obviously. And now let's kill the man on the blue proto-drake himself, Skadi. First, let's kill a few of his friends. Then we need to pick up a few of these harpoons that these guys are wearing. We need 3 to shoot him down. And also, I remember that someone would always be new to this dungeon and pick up the harpoons and just shoot them while Skadi was not around to be caught by them. So you always had to wait another round before you could actually kill the guy. And hail to the king, baby. Down he goes. And now, because this is a Wrath dungeon, and by then they had learned that people liked it when you could just exit a dungeon once you have finished it right away, we can just run through here and be out of the dungeon. So we're gonna see each other at the next one again. I really have to thank Dragonflight for one thing though, because the long distance view is so gorgeous in the old worlds, and in Northrend Man, we are entering Drak'Tharon Keep, the first of 2 troll dungeons in Wrath of the Lich King. And the story of the trolls in Northrend is not a very happy one, because these guys tried their best to fight off the Lich King, but sadly, well, even killing their own gods could not save them from the Scourge. And here we already see the best example of that, because Drak'Tharon has fallen to the Lich King and everyone here is turned undead and against their former allies. And we're basically just here to give them a swift and merciful death. And this is another dungeon that you did fairly often for leveling purposes. And I remember these wretched butchers having one hell of a punch, and sometimes if your tank wasn't careful at all, they would just become one-shotted immediately by these guys. And further we go into the ruins of Drak'Tharon. Once again, extra bonus points for putting an open skybox. And here, by the way, we have another boss that you can tame that will keep his name, because this is King Dread. Obviously, he's a devil sore, so you need to tame him as a beastmaster. But we're not here for taming, we're here for killing. And this is, by the way, one of these instances where you can farm a lot of Borean leather if you want to, as a leather worker. And this skybox obviously gets extra point, because not only is there a skybox inside the dungeon, there is also a necropolis right in front of us, and that will always be awesome. And here, instead of helping the Drakari, since we both have the same enemy, we kill the few Drakari that are still in Drak'Tharon and not corrupted by the Scourge. If you want to understand this, then ask Blizzard what their take is on any race that isn't a human or an elf, and you probably won't like the answer. But onwards we go to the last boss, and this is Prophet Taronya, and a very fun short story, but this guy yells his own name loudly, and back when I was still living with my parents, I played this game on speakers, so that meant that you could hear the stuff that was going on in the game. And my parents had a dog whose name was Ronja, and she always felt like I was calling for her whenever I did this boss. Since I played a lot of Wrath at the time, that would happen quite often. And now, because this is a Wrath dungeon, the dungeon is very kind to us, and we can just run down here and be at the entrance again, which is nice because I want to continue our travels onwards to Zildrak, because we are on our way to Gundrak, which is a dungeon that is deep in the heart of Zildrak. And honestly, I don't think I could ever pick which of the Wrath zones is my favorite, because I think I love every single one of them. And I know that some of this is probably also this nostalgia talking. And here you can see a little bit of the lore behind the Drakari, the troll tribe from Northrend. They slaughtered and offered and sacrificed their Loas in order to gain strength to fight back the Scourge. Spoiler alert, it didn't work, and now we're gonna go into a dungeon that you probably know very well, because Gundrak is also in the time walking rotation. Also, in this dungeon there is a secret boss that you probably have never killed in your life, because people usually don't do that in the dungeon runs when they want to go fast and zoom. And also, if you, again, a leather worker and a skinner, then you should really skin these beauties, because they give a lot of leather, like do most elite enemies, by the way. Wow, 1 enemy for 1 Shadow Crash. That's exactly how you should use that ability. And here we have a very creepy sight. If you bother to look over this balustrade, you see a very long snake tail. Looks a little bit like the wind serpents. And I don't think this gets explained what this is or why it is here. And now these guys need to do their little merge dance, and boom, down they go. And obviously, if you're running this dungeon, don't forget to click on the altars, because otherwise the bridge won't be open at the end of it. And now we wave goodbye to that snake tail and be on our merry way. And unlike probably in all of your dungeon runs, we're gonna go the long way, because here is where all the reputation is waiting for us. And now, after we kill Morabi, who falls over just like that, there is a second door that opens, and we're gonna sneak down here, because like I said, there is a secret boss in this dungeon. And first of all, now we're honored with the Knights of the Ebon Blade, so yay navigate to that one. And there are some ruin dwellers here. And once we have killed all of them, there is Egg the Ferocious. And Egg is the secret boss that I've been talking about. And just like that, we get the heroic Gundrak achievement, because you need to kill Egg to get the achievement. And now we're gonna kill Galdara, the end boss of this dungeon. And we are done with Gundrak as well. And now we come close to the last 2 dungeons on my list for today. Do not fret, I can count. I know these are not the last 2 dungeons in Wrath of the Lich King. I know that there are 4 more, but for now I think I'm gonna do a little cut after these dungeons, because otherwise that video is gonna be way too long, because I don't seem to be able to stop talking while I'm doing these dungeons. And we're gonna start with the Halls of Lightning. Very, very frightening. This is also a dungeon that you probably are very well known to if you do the time walking rotation, or if you have also just played as long as I have. And this is, as you know, one of these dungeons that is close to Ulduar. Also, oh, alright, I didn't expect that Shadow Crush to kill all these dudes. And you might be in the know that the whole Titan story of Azeroth is the least interesting story arc of all the story arcs in Azerothian mythology to me. But I gotta say, back when Wrath of the Lich King was the current expansion and many things about the Titans were still shrouded in mystery, and we didn't stand face to face with our creators to fight off a baby Titan, I really liked all of this. I thought it held just the right amount of mystery to it. I liked especially the view in this dungeon with all of these giant soldiers just standing down there menacingly. I also liked the look of these Titan machines and rooms. I thought it looked so weirdly not like it's even home to Azeroth in a way. But I gotta say, I'm just not a big fan of over-explaining and explaining in general everything there is to a world. I know at some point, especially if your game has been running for over 20 years, you just have this problem of, well, either you make up new myths, aka Shadowlands, or you have to explain the old ones, because at some point you can't just always say, oh well, that's a mystery. And I know that that's obviously harder for something like World of Warcraft that is a running game, that can't just be like, well, we're done after 2 seasons, see you never. Like shows could do it, for example. But first of all, extra points for showing me a little skybox of the outside world. Yay! I mean, Storm Peaks is gorgeous, so you better show that off. But still, I wish that they would have maybe done it a little bit differently than they've done it in recent years. And I'm a little bit worried about all the stuff that we're gonna find out in the War Within and the World Saga in general, because I have the feeling that it's gonna be just like Shadowlands, a whole lot of over-explaining and creating stories where maybe saying nothing at all would be a lot cooler, especially when it comes to stuff like old gods and creators. But hey, that's also just me. Maybe some of you are absolute fans of this way of storytelling and don't think that it's bad at all. That's also fine. I mean, at the end of the day, opinions about storytelling is absolutely subjective. And even I, as a very spoken out Titan disliker, cannot stand here and say that this dungeon isn't gorgeous. I love the music in here, I love the style, and I also really like these 2 dungeons. I mean, I like the Halls of Lightning definitely more than the Halls of Stone, but we're gonna cross that bridge when we get there. For now, we're just gonna kill a bunch of elementals, and once again, outside skybox. Double points for you, Halls of Lightning. And we're edging ever closer to Loken, which is one of these end bosses of a dungeon that it's weird that he is just the end boss of a dungeon, because this guy is responsible for a lot of shit in World of Warcraft lore. I'm not gonna go into detail. If you want, there are countless lore videos on YouTube for you to dive into, but let's just say, it's just weird that he is only a dungeon end boss and not something more, maybe. Oh, wait. First of all, I really want this pattern. So, let's get rid of this meat-bested caribou. Get this and learn it immediately. Also, oh yeah, I can just learn the other recipes. Let's just learn all the recipes that I have gathered so far. Then we have a few more places. Also, sous chef. Hell yeah, let's go. Now I can work for Gordon Ramsay and scream at people. And onwards we go. What I was just trying to say before I realized that I have no inventory space left once again. This was my favorite room in the entire instance. I really like these planets, how they float and all these effects. And man, at core, I'm really such a cosmic baby boy and I really like that stuff. But in WoW, they always had a way, especially following the Cataclysm, of making all this stuff seem so explained. No, not the biggest fan of that. But let's kill our way to Loken and very nonchalantly kill this big bad baddie of World of Warcraft lore. Down he goes. Ooh, he dropped the colossal skull-clad cleaver. Now, when I got this weapon with my Death Knight, I felt so cool about that because this weapon looks like this. And there's only one other tint of this weapon in the game. It also drops here in Wrath. And I just felt so cool about that. I didn't want to take this weapon off for anything. And now just opposite to the Halls of Lightning, we have the Halls of Stone. And I'm standing outside of this dungeon for a moment because the music is so beautiful. Like I already said in the Halls of Lightning, this part of the Titan lore and Titan look and Titan feel that they brought in with Ulduar in Wrath of the Lich King, I really enjoyed. And I wish we could go back to this, but obviously once the cat is out of the bag, you can't really go to mysteries and secrets and all of that and wonder. Because, well, now I have seen the Titans, and even though on this channel, obviously, we ignore everything that happened in Shadowlands, the fact that in Shadowlands they thought the best way to make our Titans look stupid is making things that created the Titans. First of all, that's never really good storytelling, and also, let's ignore all of that and jump into the Halls of Stone. Or walk, of course. Thank you, Timeless Proto-Drake. And this is a dungeon that probably a few of you that have done this dungeon on level or while leveling remember as the Bronzebeard dungeon. Because right now, this looks like your everyday dungeon. Very fun, very easy. We're just running around, killing dark, ruined iron dwarfs left and right. But, let me just say, this won't stay this way. This is the easy farmable part of this dungeon. And, oh, yeah, my inventory is full. Be right back, guys. Now we're back and I have sold everything that was in my bags and that I didn't need anymore. So far, this dungeon looks easy peasy lemon squeezy. And if you're in these dungeons to farm reputation for Wrath, then I would recommend to just run this dungeon until you come to the part where you have to talk to Bronzebeard. We're gonna come to it very soon. But first of all, we gotta give this dungeon some bonus points for this very room because holy hell, this looks so cool. Like, give me more stuff like this, like a view across a giant cave where they're just creating these monstrosities out of stone. Yes to that one. More of that, please. The first boss we're gonna defeat is Crystallis. And he's standing over there, being almighty and big and dangerous. And he's rightfully angry at us because we just killed so many of these tiny baby stonelings. I would also be very cross with us. And now we just jump down here because in Wrath they truly polished this whole, you run in a very smooth circle through the instance and once you're done, you're just at the entrance again. They started it in TBC. We already talked about that in my TBC dungeon video. But here it's really, this is on another level. And here we come to the Maiden of Grief, who drops, by the way, a very cool mace. It's a two-hand mace, so not for my little priest friend here, obviously. But I don't think there's anything like it in the game. It's exactly the thing that she's holding right now. But I farmed this because it looks very cool with a lot of, especially, obviously, Paladin transmog. But you know what, my little warrior and Death Knight friends? Don't let your dreams be dreams, alright? And that shaman that is wearing a staff, even though he really wanted to wear the shield but is acting now like the staff was his dream all along, you can also wear that beauty. And now we're coming to the fun part of the instance because, well, first of all, credit where credit is due, outside skybox, ta-da! I mean, to be fair, most Wrath dungeons have an outside skybox, but why? Because the Wrath dungeons in Wrath was awesome. But now we're gonna talk to little troublemaker over here. We're just gonna accept his quest because why not? And now we're going to protect him. And it eludes me why they chose to create the dwarfication of annoyance that is Toddy Whiskers if Bran Bronzebeard was there all along. He was annoying before you were even coded, Toddy, alright? Stay in your line. I really wish they would have built Dragon Scale Expedition on top of Bran and not on top of a complete new and also very annoying dwarf character. Now we're going to talk to Bran once again, and yep, we're going to stay here for a while because now a system is going to activate that is not okay with us accessing any information on who the FR makers are and what they're up to or why they are so silent and not around. And this is, I think, a 3-minute scripted encounter of Bran being over there and us being over here and waves of enemies just coming our way. These heads also are going to activate and shoot beams at us, yeah, like that, or fire or whatever. And yeah, this is just a grande old time. I certainly do not miss this thing being in the rotation for daily dungeons, let me put it that way. In my opinion, this dungeon is way worse than Oculus could ever be, because this dungeon does the one thing that I do not like dungeons to do. It makes me waste my time. Gonna see you once I'm done protecting Bran. Oh yeah, we did it. Tribunal of Ages. Now let's get our well-deserved loot. And now we have to run back, obviously, to the entrance of the dungeon. This time the dungeon does this funny little thing where you have to do the running yourself and it doesn't give you a quick jump back to the entrance, and tries to get away with that, but because it has a beautiful skybox and a beautiful stone room, obviously we will forgive the instance for that. And over there in the distance you can already see Bran waiting for us again. But the horrible part of this dungeon is over now, because for now he's just gonna slowly open this door for us, and then we're gonna be able to kill Sjonir the Iron Shaper. So come on. By the way, is Bran supposed to be a rogue? Because he does a lot of rogue stuff. He was just stealthing and now he was also able to lockpick. So and now we have also managed to do the Halls of Stone. Yay to us. And with all of these dungeons in the bag, I'm gonna end today's episode right here. I know, like I said, there are a few more dungeons, but we're gonna do them when we do the raids as well. At least I hope that I'm gonna be able to talk a little bit less and fit more into one episode, but we shall see. Maybe the Wrath week is the one week where every single episode is just dungeon content, because I can't stop talking. But anyway, thank you so much for watching as always. And also, by the way, thank you so much for all the great wishes and all the celebration for me getting my bachelor's degree. I felt very special reading all of them. And as always, if you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a like and a comment. It helps so much and I appreciate it. And also, if you haven't subscribed yet, maybe consider doing that as well. And with all of that being said, I'm gonna say bye bye until the next time.